Welcome to Rebel Speak. This is our second part of 3 parts in chapter 3 of Isaiah Meanderings, and the prior, part A, is looking at just kind of, this chapter is going to reference children and women in a way that's quite derogatory, and it's just looking at kind of a quick look at Scripture and God's view of women and what Scripture speaks. It's just addressing, because sometimes we can be reading, but we're way, the Old Testament's far, far away from us. It's far, far away from us. And then we bump into the parts of it that we find deeply offensive, and then we kind of don't know what to do with it. We're like, I don't really like this book. And so much beauty gets lost in that foreignness. So kind of cutting through some of the foreignness, that we can hear the heart of God, because God's speaking to a culture within a cultural context. God's not afraid of culture. He's not afraid of the limits of my understanding. We are creatures of culture. God likes culture. God likes history. God is not that abstract sense of all-knowing. Like when we say, well, I'm not perfect, but like that idea of perfect is, as I understand it, that's not a very Hebrew sense of perfect. Like, Scripture will talk about people who are perfect because it's relating so differently. That's a kind of a Greek that, like, here's perfect. I have this idea of perfect. If you do Plato, right? Like, I hope sometimes I can be really off base, but there's the idea of the form, right? Like, so there's this perfect form of a triangle versus the triangles that exist. Hebrew mind would be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, everything exists because God made it, and God is with us, engaged with us. There's not some better version of God. There's not some better version of me. I can make choices. I can be righteous. But this idea of kind of like, no, only a perfect person can speak. Wow. Okay, that means only a very vain person. Like, okay, well, I am she. Let me speak. Or you surrender your voice. The presence of Christ in, that's a Christian idea, but that comes off of the Old Testament understanding that I'm made in God's image, and I am not on some pre-imagined journey of me. All right, I'm not some triangle up in the sky that's of form. I believe that's the word for it. There's not some form of me that's a better version of me. I'm a me living in time and place with a God whose delight is in me, working with me, wooing me, getting me, growing me, helping me be all that I'm meant to be. I want to say that. So none of that like, oh, well, I'm not perfect, but let me just say, no, that idea of perfect doesn't really exist. I've heard people say, well, there is one. Well, I don't know. I just think it's a very cut off from human existence sense of perfect. All right. Verse 2. God's going to be talking about bad leadership, and God's going to be implying that the leadership's bad, and God's trying to bring them to their senses, okay? God is very much trying to bring them to their senses. So throughout the Old Testament, when God is frustrated, he wants to shock. He's speaking in a way that is shocking to get ears to hear that God is shocked, because God still has his eye on course correction, okay? This destruction that's coming has a good amount of time before it comes, okay? But this is the path you're on. It's not pretty. That's going to be the final verse. You're not on a pretty path, okay? Well, it looks pretty, but that's your problem. It's leading you to destruction. But there are going to be some course corrections within this book, of the greater book of Isaiah. But right now, God's coming at their leadership, and he's going to reveal the corruption within the leadership right here. He will destroy all the nation's leaders. Now, he's going to tell you who these leaders are. Okay, the first people leading them are heroes. And I don't know, I just think that's an interesting word. Like, what does it mean to have heroes leading you? Do we want a world where our heroes are leading you? Depends on why that hero is a hero. Like, right? Is it a noble hero? I just want to ask, why are our heroes our heroes? And to make sure, do you know why your heroes are your heroes? And are your heroes, the heroes you've put as heroes in your life, are they good leaders? Okay, number 1, heroes. Soldiers, okay, the warriors that are fighting well and defending. Judges are important. They should know the difference between justice and unjust things, right? Judges should be able, good judges, right? That's in the Old Testament. The need for good judges. Moses got exhausted. He needed help. Okay, we need good judges. Prophets. Okay, those are leaders mentioned. And now it's going to get interesting. Diviners, those that practice divination. I don't believe that leaders in Jerusalem, Judah should be divination people. Elders. Okay, well that's right. There's a lot of respect for elders. A lot of respect for those that have lived longer. Okay, how about this? Army officers. Honorable citizens. Is that truly, are they truly honorable citizens, or have we chosen to give honor? We can give honor to people very unworthy of the honor we're giving them. I don't know, but this list is telling. Advisors, okay, those that give advice. Again, are you getting good advice? Who's advising the leadership here? Are they worthy? Who's giving the advice to the leaders? How about skilled magicians? Wait a minute. Again, this is letting us know what this is letting us know that there's something wrong with this list. Skilled magicians are not meant to be part of the leadership. Whoa. Okay, that's not following Yahweh. And expert enchanters. Oh, yes. Okay, so this is just, to me, a fascinating list. God's like, I'm getting rid of the nation's leaders. Here's why. Look at your leadership. Look what you're trusting in. Look how you've set yourselves up. Just a little bit earlier in Isaiah, there will be a time where we come to the Lord and He settles our differences, because He is, in reference to the word perfect, He is all-knowing, okay? But no, we're doing a little bit. We've got some prophets in here. Don't know how good they are. We've got some judges. Okay, we've got some elders, perhaps. But we've also won a little bit of, let's throw in a little bit of magician, because, it's kind of more fun. It's more interesting. Like that all Yahweh way, that's kind of boring. I'm looking for something a little more exciting. Let's dabble into some magic, Oh, expert enchanters. Can we call up and find ourselves some expert enchanters? I'm in need of some expert enchanters. Okay, here's the problem. You've lost you don't even know how to discern. Sometimes I talk about discerning a good cup of coffee. If you don't have a palate that can discern a good cup of coffee, you can't serve a good cup of coffee. If you don't have a palate that can discern righteousness, you can't serve righteousness. If you don't have a palate that really understands the terrain of human flourishing, you can't create governance that helps humans flourish. It's an issue. It's an issue with leadership. God's addressing leadership. I've got an issue with your leadership. And the problem is that your leadership is deeply muddied. It's deeply muddied. It's not looking to any capital T truth. The one that created you in God's image, that knows you well, that can say, hey, this is what flourishing looks like. No, we'll have a tablespoon of that. But this looks kind of fun. Wow, I like that. Okay, and then not only that, God's going to destroy your leadership. After that, now this is a critique, okay? God is critiquing, saying this, wake up, look what you've got. God will appoint children to rule over you. And when God does that, the implication being, like, you're so close to this already, but when children rule over you, anarchy will prevail. And not archy leader. You'll have no leaders. You'll have no leaders. And when you have no leaders, okay, the concept here is that good governance runs a nation in a way that all of its people flourish to the best of its ability, okay? Not kind of, not greedy. We'll see some greediness down in this passage, but there's a flourishing. Oh, but no, there's going to be children. This is not good, because anarchy will prevail. And what happens when anarchy prevails? It's right here. People will take advantage of each other. Man against man, neighbor fighting neighbor. The way that the world is working as you know it right now is going to fall apart. It's going to fall apart, and you're going to be there's no peace. Violence is everywhere. Dog eat dog, we say. The precipice of destruction is always just behind your shoulder. The precipice of destruction is all around you, because there's no good government in the land that's creating a world where folk thrive. No, they're not, their eyes not on your thriving. They're not following the one that can show them how to create governance that allows folk to thrive. Therefore, it's anarchy prevailing, and therefore, human being is fighting human being, and neighbor is fighting neighbor, and stability is nowhere to be found. This is a sign of absolute chaos in the Old Testament. Young people will revolt against authority. Nothing holds, nothing remains, nothing is predictable. And the folk that are able to rebel have not the capacity. They don't know within themselves. They have no internal logic. Here's the problem. A youth that rebels against the authority around them, the authority, the established order, is a stupid youth. That's a stupid youth. When that little guy in the New Testament, there's the story of two brothers, and one's like, I don't want to live this way under you, Father, anymore. I just want my inheritance, and I'm going to do it better. That's an unwise young person that thinks that somehow at my in my youthful state, I know more than a person that's lived a lot longer than I. That's vanity. It's stupidity. And not only will youth be rising up against those in authority, those that should know more, you're going to have nobodies, people that have proven themselves nowhere. They just walked out into the world, and these nobodies are going to sneer. They're going to look down, that facial sneering. They're going to be kind of, I'm going to say, a cursing of truly honorable people. This is such an upside down world, because it's a world that doesn't grow. It's a world on a fast-paced, rapid-paced path to destruction. There we go. Rapid-paced path to destruction. When people that know nothing think they know more than those who have lived well and wisely. A world where there's no respect, there's no appreciation, there's no honor, there's no, we're gonna self-promote, and it's anarchy. Okay, but it's not just anarchy. I guess it's anarchy. Like at its root, it's. I think of that. Oh, there's a great book I read about when the Soviet Union, Darkness at Noon. I don't know, but it's about like where just words mean nothing, and whoever pivots themselves best is now in leadership, and so it's just chaotic, and whoever lies best or gets in, like there's no truth, there's no soundness, would be another word. There's nothing sound, there's nothing truthful. Like, wow, I admire you because in you is truth and words of wisdom, and I want to align my life to your words of wisdom that I can grow in wisdom. No. People that know nothing become presidents of the bank, and they've never dealt with money before in their life. But there's just this kind of, no, I know more than you. I know more than you. I know more than you. That's a sign of anarchy, stupidity, thinking it's wise. In those days, a man, now here's what's going to happen, because because things have become chaotic and there's no wisdom, we're going to look, I think this is interesting, we're going to look for what you have. Oh, well, maybe you can lead us. And so a brother's going to look to his brother and say, wow, how did you manage to get a cloak? A coat. Coats are very important in Scripture, honestly. Like, and I don't know, like, it's cold. When you're too poor to own a coat, that's pretty miserable. And so this brother's going to see that this one man's going to see his brother has a cloak, and he's going to say, hey, can you lead us? Because you somehow managed to secure a coat. I really admire that. I really admire that you managed to have a coat, because take charge. Can you lead us in this heap of ruins? Look, something in you managed to secure a coat in the midst of all this chaos. And the one who's managed to secure a coat is going to turn to his brother and say, no, I can't help. I don't have any extra food. Don't even look at me. Don't even ask anything of me. Don't ask of me to share for my provision. I don't have any extra food or clothes. Don't ask me to get involved. And I think this is, again, one of these powerful, you could just read over it and miss it. In this chaos, I'm all about me. And that's part of the chaos. Part of the chaos is that there's not any of that truly noble. Okay, now I don't know where that word comes from, because I'm not into nobility. I'm not into, I don't know. There's certain things dialogues that don't interest me. I'm talking about an honorable person who behaves in a way that says, let me help you. Things are chaotic. Obviously, I'm doing better than you. Let me invest in you some, okay? That's a good world. That's a good world where I obviously am doing better than you. But in this circumstance, the one who's doing better, like, don't come near, nope, I've just got enough for me and my family. Oh, yeah, we look a lot more better off than you. But you know what? Ultimately, our life is consumed in itself. I don't know, I just want to say that. That's what happens. We're preoccupied. The righteous order of the land isn't to be found. There's no righteous order in the land. I can't help you. My doors are shut. We'll see that image. Our windows are shut. I'm not involved in your need at all. I'm all about just me. Okay, so I can't help you. Don't ask me to get involved. It is chaotic. You're on your own. I'm sorry your boat is sinking. That's not what the land should look like. Judah will fall because Jerusalem will fall. It will lie in ruins because they speak out against Yahweh and refuse to obey him. Again, we're not talking about blind obedience. Some of us grew up in a world where just the word obey is kind of a tricky word. But they're not looking to God as a righteous voice in their midst. God's amongst them in the temple. They're not looking to that voice that's, I'm the one. Look at the sky. I made the sky. Look at the stars. Look at the goodness. There's goodness established in the earth, and I made it. No, they're ignoring that one. You have nothing. I don't know. I sometimes see that finger in the air. You've got nothing to say. I'm not interested in anything you're saying, God. You don't know anything. You're kind of boring. They have offended God's actual presence, his glorious presence. Okay, so there's God's glorious presence among them. And they've offended God rightly. They're like, I'd rather turn to magicians. Diviners, that sounds fascinating. Divination, let's do it. And in that state, their very face shows it. I think their countenance, there's something about their countenance that gives way, it displays their guilt. Okay, and we're going to look a little bit here now about what it means to be guilty and what it means to live in a way that you don't even acknowledge your own guilt. So it's going to go from your face, I can see your guilt in your face, but instead of saying, wow, something's wrong and crooked in my heart, something's wrong and crooked in us as a city, something's wrong and crooked in us as Judah. No, they're going to sin openly like the people of Sodom. Okay, it's the offense that I am so, in that story of Sodom and Gomorrah, they're so aggressive in their appetites. They're so aggressive that they don't care what damage they do to others. This me orientation is so great that there's this sense that I just care about me and my appetite. And God says, I'm destroying that. In Scripture, Sodom and Gomorrah stand for that which was so violent in its selfishness. Selfishness to such a degree of violence and appetite. Our appetites, Paul says our appetites can consume us, where we have given to our appetites with no shame, no count of the consequence, somehow thinking it funny. Sometimes I've seen that. It's not funny. You've lost the ability. They have lost the ability to be ashamed of how gross, meaning big, how grossly they have violated the very image of God within them. Like sometimes we have a conscience and then we override our conscience and then we have guilt. And if we live continually overriding our conscience, we become something that we don't want to be. Think of that portrait of Dorian Gray where it's an Oscar Wilde short novel, but the man is he sins and he takes advantage. He takes advantage of people, and he's very, very handsome. That handsome, the good looks allow him to take advantage, right? He uses that gift. But there's this painting, this portrait that he keeps hidden away that shows he's very ugly. His soul, maybe it's a portrait of his soul. That the way that his sin violates other fellow humans is revealed in that portrait. Even though he still continues handsome, he's become something deeply disturbing, and he knows it in the novel. They are not one bit ashamed. There's a way that they think there is no, their sin will never catch up to them. How terrible it will be for them, because they've become convinced that they are above reproach. They can do anything. They have brought about their own destruction. I think here there's a way that God's like, you think you're above me. You're above the created order, let's say that. But in an instant, I can shake things and they'll fall apart. And in an instant, you'll be faced with your own humanity that really, you think you're all that and you're nothing. You've convinced yourself that you can behave any way you want. There's no cost, no consequence. And when you bump into the truth, when you bump into a truth that is greater than you, you will meet your own destruction. And you may be shocked. You're not what you think you are. And then there's going to be a segue here about those that never lose sight of God in their midst. Okay, those that never lose sight of God in their midst. It will go well for them. Even in the midst of, right, maybe hard shakenings, there's a promise here that when God comes to Abraham and the angel of the Lord comes to Abraham and says, I'm going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and decides to share that information with Abraham. Abraham says, what about like if there's 15 or 10 or 5? And I don't remember. I'm sure you've already picked up on that. I'm unreliable in details. But there's this thing that's like, hey, well, what about this? What about this? And then in the end, I believe that when the angel leads Lot and his wife and I believe it's 2 daughters out, the righteous are pulled out. But there's this sense that when God destroys Sodom and Gomorrah, it's so rotten to the core. See, when we can become, as a culture, something incredibly violent. Cultures can become things that are just practicing behaviors and disrespect. They can become something that is rotten. Okay, it has what a tree that rotten falls over it. There's no soundness within it. Okay, they can become, cultures can grow. Cultures can grow horrible behaviors that over time become increasingly destructive. And what happens differently here than when God says, no, I'm going in and I'm taking out Sodom and Gomorrah, I'm taking them out for the violence that has no value for human life. Here in the book of Isaiah, God says, no, I see you, I see. All will be well for those who are godly. Tell them. He wants Isaiah to tell them. You will receive a wonderful reward. I'm not blind to the ones that are righteous in the midst of all this perverse chaos. I'm not blind. You will receive a wonderful reward. But say to the wicked, okay, there's a big difference. Big difference. I've been thinking about the first letter of John, right? How it's contrasting sin with lack of truth. That's different for John, but I won't go into that right now. But you who are wicked, okay? So God's not going through our life with what we used to call a fine-tooth comb. Trying to get the little bits out. God's not going through our life with a fine-tooth comb. We're not walking, as we've said, on a tightrope walk. It's what has your heart oriented itself towards. And you all, who with all that I've said, all my years of engagement with you as a people, have oriented your heart to that which is truly wicked. So much so that you have become wicked, I might add. Say to the wicked, your destruction is sure. You too will get what you deserve. Your well-earned punishment is on the way. It's coming. It's coming. Okay. Children oppress my people. I just want to talk about that word oppress. People that shouldn't have authority to push them down. People that shouldn't have authority have the authority to oppress them. This is very telling. Often when a culture has got really crooked and wrong, people that shouldn't have the authority come in and they're oppressive. At the end of Solomon's reign, God is fed up with the oppressive nature. And the old wise people say, don't be more oppressive. And it's his youthful young advisors that say, go in all the more. And it's the end of the single kingdom. Where are you getting your advice? And what's its vision for the people? Because if the vision is oppressing the people, it's bad advice. Okay, oppress my people. Oh, my people, can't you see what fools your rulers are? God says, not people. Your rulers are fools. Don't believe in them. They're running off to magicians. They're running off to divination. Here's what the closing sentence for verse 12. They are leading you down a pretty garden path to destruction. A pretty garden path. It looks good. It looks good. They're saying, hey, look, come on, we've got you, we've got you, we've got you. But look where the end of the path is going. It's going away from God. It's going away from truth. It's going away from order and human thriving. Because good governance, the job of good leaders is to create a world where many can flourish in terms of creating. Right? That we're meant to not just be given things, we're meant to be our ability to create and grow and become. That's important. Good governance. Okay, that's important to God. It's very, very, very important that you're able to eat from what your hands have created, that you have access to the things you need to be able to create such that you can eat. How is access being provided? It's important in Scripture. But at this point, they are leading you. They're saying, hey, we're in charge and we've got you, we've got you, we've got you, we're taking you. And it looks good. They're saying, oh, it's rosy. Things are going well at this point. At this point, for Judah, things are going well. And here is Isaiah saying, no, this path is leading to destruction. Your leaders, your rulers are bad. And the consequences of them defying what Scripture tells you wisdom looks like will be destruction. And Isaiah is trying to prevent that. He's trying to speak into the story, say, hey, wake up, be a part of that, the righteous ones. All right. God bless you.